Well, thank you all for allowing me to speak to the class tonight. I believe the topic for my speech is something that's really relevant to some of the concerns we've brought up in class, and so I hope that this will be interesting for you and not just an exercise to help me out. So, thank you. So, I wanted to know, and this could be a rhetorical question, but have you ever struggled with your weight? Have you ever packed on pounds no matter what diet you tried? Ever felt that you were just broken? For whatever reason, you could not lose weight or control your weight. Like you always have a constant fluctuation that might be unexplained. Um, if any of that, applies to you, then I think I've got something to share with you that has changed my life and the way I look at it. I personally have been overweight since I went to primary school, and we had to finish our lunch um, before we could go out and play. So at 6 years old, I learned that you can eat past full, okay? And you know how great school lunches are. Even back in my day, you had to finish your corn, your mashed potatoes, your peas, and your chicken nuggets, before you could go, canned peaches. So anyway, so the thing that I want to discuss with you is called insulin resistance. It might be a term some of you are familiar with. I wasn't aware of it until a doctor brought it to my attention. And what you don't know about it just might be killing you. So I think it's pretty important now that I have your attention. So the American diet of refined carbohydrates and sugars is basically creating a nation of insulin-resistant and obese people. 1 in 4 Americans are considered overweight now. Childhood obesity is at an all-time high, and billions of dollars are spent every year on diet aids, seemingly to little or no avail. And why does the issue of obesity seem to be so prevalent in our society? When you look at our diet, it's very high in processed foods, refined carbohydrates, things that have been enriched to the point of having no value. And then it's really easy to obtain fast food here. It's inexpensive. Instant foods are another biggie. I grab instant oatmeal when I leave the house and try to fit it in before lunch. Processed foods are perceived as also being tastier than whole foods. So by the time I was in my early 30s, I did think I was broken. No matter what I tried to do, I could not seem to lose weight. Was it my metabolism, my thyroid, you name it, I had it checked. But it wasn't until I was introduced to the concept of insulin resistance that things began to make sense for me. I stand before you still overweight, but I've lost over 20 pounds in 9 weeks. And I've just learned what I needed to do to fight this resistance that I now know I have. The condition can also sometimes be called metabolic syndrome or syndrome X, and it's more common among us than you might think. Understanding the cause and the prevention of it will not only result in, maybe being thinner if that's your goal, but you'll just be healthier overall. I want to look at exactly what insulin resistance is, though, so that you have a clear understanding of it and its health consequences. Also, how you can determine if this could possibly be affecting you or someone you love, and how to reverse the condition, or preferably avoid it altogether. So, in Dr. Ray Street's book, Releasing Fat, insulin resistance is said to be caused by the extreme rise and fall of our blood sugar level throughout the day. Insulin is our fat-storing hormone. So that's the storage, the thing that stores the stuff for us. And its primary job is to transport blood sugar from the bloodstream to the muscle. Highly processed carbs cause insulin levels to basically spike. And then after a meal, that insulin will drive the sugar into a cell where it's either going to be used and burned or stored as fat. So eating items that are processed convert to sugar really quick, causing that swift rise and fall that you're used to, that crash, and an overabundance of insulin will be produced at this point. This causes like a vicious cycle of insulin abuse and carbohydrate addiction. we just joke about being carb addicts. It actually happens. On the other hand is glucagon. Now that's your fat releasing hormone. We love that hormone. Stimulated by the intake of protein in our diet, it's the glucagon that will actually allow your body to naturally release fat. And it's also suppressed by the intake of carbs in our diet. So bad, highly processed carbs. Eating this increases the insulin levels, decreases the glucagon levels, and now you have basically created an environment that is like a sponge to maintain fat. Prolonged periods of doing this is what actually trains our bodies to crave more and more simple sugars. So that carb addict or carb craving you're having is biological. It's not a lack of willpower. It's just something that you've created, okay? Now, metabolic syndrome proper is actually a combination of a number of health problems. Dr. Christian Northrup, in her book Women's Bodies and Women Wisdom, states that a patient must have 3 or more of these to be diagnosed with full-blown insulin resistance. Central obesity, high blood pressure, elevated triglyceride levels, fasting glucose of greater than 110, high levels of LDL, the bad cholesterol, and low levels of HDL. If you have 3 or more of these, you're considered to have metabolic syndrome, which I have been diagnosed with, and the next step, if you ignore it, is diabetes, type 2. So, and if you think that it doesn't apply to you, back in 1994, 24% of the population was diagnosed with having this. And the man who actually identified metabolic syndrome recently said he estimates over 75 million Americans have developed this. So, if you're in any of the stages of insulin resistance, or worse, if you're in full-blown metabolic syndrome, as I am, your body could basically be working against you, which you've known all along and probably said, my body's working against me. Well, it does. But this doesn't have to be the case. And I've seen that in the past 9 weeks. So several studies show how it can be reversed, just simple changes to, yes, diet and exercise. But it's worth it. I'm feeling better, and all I've been doing is eating a diet full of complex carbohydrates and whole foods, and I'll add a modest amount of exercise. Now, the exercise has not been daily for me, but at least I do something 3 times a week maybe. So the exercise is important because when you are in metabolic syndrome, the calorie in and a calorie out, that old adage is inaccurate. Because your body, if you're bringing in calories that spike your insulin, then that goes out the window with the calorie, just being able to burn it as normal. Your body doesn't work that way yet. But if you eat a diet that's high in these complex carbohydrates and balanced, like the snacks I brought tonight, cherries, yes, chocolate-covered raisins, cashews, things that we love, those are snacks that are fine for that because they rate really well on the glycemic index. So it's pretty easy to eat, things that you do love and not have to take everything out of your diet that you don't. Or at least it has been easy for me. And then, and of course, exercising, when you build that muscle, that's when you start exciting glucagon levels, and you actually start, that fat-releasing hormone naturally starts working. And then when you find that you have balanced the insulin and the glucagon, your body just starts releasing that fat. I've seen it in weight, and I've seen it in measurements. So I believe it's vital to your health and the people that you love to be aware of this and the health risk. Being particular about what you eat and when you eat it, and getting some activity is also key. And remember that with this information, you could be well on your way to living a much healthier life. I believe that I am. So, thank you.